For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had dismissed the ancient tales as children's stories. Legends spoke of a mythical species called humans, being so primitive they fought with metal projectiles, yet so fierce they could conquer entire star systems with nothing but determination and outdated technology. These stories were filed away with other galactic folklore, alongside tales of ghost ships and immortal warriors. But myths have a way of becoming reality when you least expect them. When the Zephyrian Empire launched their unstoppable war machine across the galaxy, consuming civilizations like a cosmic plague, even the most advanced species fell within days. Their quantum weaponry could disintegrate matter at the molecular level. Their psychic commanders could break minds across light years. Their biomechanical soldiers were bred for perfection in every conceivable combat scenario. The galaxy was dying, and hope was nothing more than a fading memory. That's when the first human ship appeared at the edge of Centauri space. A crude metal construct that should have been vaporized the moment it dropped out of hyperspace. Instead, it did something that made the entire galaxy hold its breath. It fought back, and it won. What the galaxy was about to learn was that some myths are born from truth so terrifying, so impossible to comprehend, that the only way to survive the knowledge is to forget it ever existed. They were about to discover that humans weren't just real. They were the one thing in the universe that even the Zephyrians had learned to fear. The age of human legend was about to begin again. Commander Zara Velthorn of the Galactic Survey Corps had seen her share of impossible things during her 40-year career exploring the far reaches of space. She had witnessed stars being born from cosmic dust, discovered civilizations that existed in dimensions beyond normal perception, and once observed a planet that existed in 17 different time streams simultaneously. But nothing in her extensive experience had prepared her for what her deep space sensors were detecting in the Kepler 442 system. The readings made no sense. According to every scientific principle known to galactic civilization, the energy signatures her ship was picking up should not exist. The scanner showed massive industrial complexes on multiple worlds, sophisticated defensive networks, and what appeared to be a thriving technological civilization. Yet this sector had been classified as empty space for over 3 millennia. The star charts, verified by countless expeditions, clearly marked this region as containing nothing more than dead rocks and cosmic debris. Commander, I'm running diagnostics on all sensor arrays for the 3rd time, reported Lieutenant Kex, his blue-scaled hands dancing across the control interface with practiced precision. The instruments are functioning perfectly. Whatever is out there, it's really there. Zara's crystalline eyes narrowed as she studied the holographic display floating above the bridge's central console. The data streams showed not just one inhabited world, but an entire system bustling with activity. Massive space stations orbited gas giants. Mining operations stripped asteroids with mechanical precision. And, most disturbing of all, her sensors detected what could only be described as military installations of enormous scale. "This is impossible," muttered Chief Science Officer Thane, his 4 arms working frantically at multiple data terminals. According to the Galactic Historical Archive, this system was thoroughly surveyed during the Great Expansion. The expedition reports clearly state that while Kepler 442b showed signs of having once supported primitive life, it was completely barren. No trace of intelligence, no technological signatures, nothing. The ship's artificial intelligence, a sophisticated quantum consciousness known as Aria, materialized its holographic avatar beside the command chair. "Commander, I have completed a comprehensive analysis of the data. The technological signatures are unlike anything in our databases. The energy patterns suggest a civilization that has developed along completely different scientific principles from any known species. Their power generation methods appear to be based on controlled fusion reactions of a type we have never encountered." Zara felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. In 3,000 years of galactic exploration, every intelligent species had followed similar technological development paths. The laws of physics were universal, after all. Energy manipulation, faster than light travel, quantum computing. There were only so many ways to solve these fundamental challenges. Yet what she was seeing suggested a completely alien approach to science and technology. Set course for the 3rd planet. she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had faced the unknown more times than she could count. Maintain maximum stealth protocols. I want to know who or what is down there before they know we exist. As the survey ship adjusted its trajectory, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to stumble into something that would change everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. The readings were becoming clearer as they approached, and what they revealed was even more disturbing. The planet's surface showed signs of massive terraforming projects, but not the gradual, careful reshaping that characterized most galactic civilizations. This looked like brute force engineering on a scale that should have been impossible. Commander, Lieutenant Kex's voice carried a note of confusion. I'm detecting multiple communication frequencies from the planet's surface. The signals are primitive by our standards, but they're carrying enormous amounts of data. And there's something else. The electromagnetic spectrum analysis suggests the beings down there are using radio waves for everything from entertainment to military coordination. Radio waves? Thane looked up from his instruments in disbelief. That's a technology most species abandon within a few centuries of achieving space flight. It's incredibly inefficient compared to quantum entanglement communication or psi-wave transmission. Arya's avatar flickered slightly as it processed the incoming data. The technology appears to be intentionally primitive in some respects, while showing remarkable sophistication in others. Their military installations are protected by energy shields that operate on principles I cannot fully analyze with our current sensor suite. Yet their civilian communications rely on technologies that our ancestors used 15,000 years ago. As they entered the outer edge of the system, Zara noticed something that made her blood run cold. The defensive installations weren't just sophisticated, they were active. Energy readings spiked across multiple frequency ranges, and she realized they were being scanned by detection systems that were somehow reading their ship's configuration through their supposedly impenetrable stealth field. They know we're here, she whispered, watching as massive structures on the system's outer asteroids began to rotate toward their position. How is that possible? Before anyone could answer, the communication array erupted with activity. A signal was coming in on a frequency that shouldn't have been able to penetrate their shields, transmitted with a power level that suggested the beings down there had energy generation capabilities that rivaled small stars. Universal Translator is working on the signal, reported Kex, his voice tense with anticipation. The linguistic structure is unlike anything in our databases, but the AI is making progress. The bridge fell silent as the translation protocols worked their way through the alien communication. When the voice finally came through the speakers, it carried an accent that somehow conveyed both technological sophistication and something that could only be described as primitive aggression. Unknown vessel. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earth Defense Force. You have entered human space without authorization. State your intentions immediately, or we will be forced to take defensive action. The words hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. Zara felt her breathing apparatus cycle rapidly as she processed what she had just heard. Humans, the mythical species from the old legends. The beings that were supposed to be nothing more than children's stories told by ancient spacers during long voyages between the stars. Impossible, Thane breathed, his forearms trembling as he accessed the historical archives. The humans are myths. Ancient legends. There's no record of them ever existing except in folklore. But, even as he spoke, more data was flooding their sensors. The planet below was teeming with life, and the energy signatures were unlike anything in their databases. More disturbing still, their deep-skin protocols were detecting something that made Zara's advanced tactical training kick into high alert. The entire system wasn't just inhabited, it was fortified. Every planet, every moon, every significant asteroid had been converted into some form of military installation. Captain Chun, Zara responded, her voice carefully controlled despite the chaos of thoughts racing through her mind. This is Commander Zara Velthorn of the Galactic Survey Corps. We are on a routine exploration mission and had no knowledge that this system was inhabited. Our star charts show this region as empty space. The response came back immediately, and there was something in the human's voice that suggested she was neither surprised nor particularly concerned about this revelation. Commander Velthorn, your star charts are 3,000 years out of date. We've been monitoring galactic communications for quite some time. We know about the Zephyrian advance across the outer spiral arms. We know about the civilizations that have fallen. The information had been shared only among the most advanced civilizations, and, even then, only with their military leadership. How could these humans, living in an isolated system that wasn't supposed to exist, have access to intelligence that some council members hadn't even been briefed on? "How do you know about the Zephyrians?" she asked, though part of her already suspected the answer would be something she wouldn't want to hear. "Because we've been fighting them for the last 50 years, Captain Chen replied, and there was something in her voice that suggested she wasn't boasting, just stating a simple fact. "They made the mistake of attacking one of our outer colonies in 2387. It was the last mistake they made in this sector of the galaxy." The bridge crew exchanged glances that conveyed a mixture of disbelief and growing comprehension. If these humans were telling the truth, if they had actually been engaging the Zephyrians in combat and winning, it would explain why the invasion had stalled in the outer spiral arms. The Galactic Council had assumed the Zephyrians were simply regrouping for a final assault on the core worlds. "We'd like to request permission to send a diplomatic shuttle to the planet's surface," Zara said, making a decision that she knew would either save the galaxy or get her court-martialed. "The Galactic Council needs to know about your people and your capabilities." There was a long pause before Captain Chen responded, and when she did, there was something in her voice that reminded Zara of the ancient legends about humans, stories of beings who could face impossible odds and somehow find a way to win. "Permission granted, Commander. But I should warn you, what you're about to see is going to challenge everything you think you know about warfare, technology, and what it means to fight for survival. The humans aren't just back in the galaxy. We never left. We've just been waiting for the right time to remind everyone why the old stories exist." As Zara prepared to lead the first official contact between humanity and the galactic community in 3 millennia, she couldn't shake the feeling that the universe was about to become a very different place. The humans were real. They were advanced far beyond what anyone had imagined possible, and, most importantly, they had been fighting the galaxy's greatest threat for decades. The question that terrified and excited her in equal measure was simple. If the humans had been holding back the Zephyrian advance for 50 years, what would happen when they decided to stop playing defense and go on the attack? The shuttle bay of the human facility was unlike anything in Zara's extensive experience with galactic architecture. Where most advanced civilizations favored flowing organic curves and energy-based construction materials, this place was built from what appeared to be refined metal and ceramic composites. Everything had sharp angles and brutal efficiency, as if the builders had prioritized function over form in every design decision. Commander Zara Velthorn stepped off her diplomatic shuttle alongside Lieutenant Kex and Chief Science Officer Thane, their environmental suits automatically adjusting to the human standard atmosphere. The gravity was slightly higher than galactic standard, and she noticed her team unconsciously adopting a more cautious gait to compensate. Captain Sarah Chun was waiting for them at the bay entrance, and Zara's first glimpse of a human in person was both fascinating and unsettling. The being stood roughly 2 meters tall, with a bilateral symmetrical body structure that was common among galactic species, but there was something in her posture and bearing that suggested predatory instincts barely held in check. Her skin was a warm brown color. Her hair was black and pulled back in what appeared to be a military style, and her eyes held an intelligence that seemed to evaluate everything around her for potential threats and tactical advantages. "Commander Velthorn." Captain Chen extended her right hand in what Zara's cultural database identified as a human greeting ritual called a handshake. "Welcome to Luna Station. I hope your shuttle flight down was comfortable." Zara carefully extended her own primary manipulator appendage, noting that the human's grip was firm without being aggressive. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting, Captain Chen. I must admit, discovering your people has raised more questions than I know how to ask." "I imagine it has," Chen replied with what appeared to be amusement. "Follow me. Admiral Rodriguez is waiting to brief you on our current situation. I think you'll find the conversation illuminating." As they walked through the corridors of the facility, Zara observed everything with the trained eye of a survey officer. The walls were lined with what appeared to be status displays showing data streams she couldn't interpret, but the pace and volume of information suggested a military installation operating at full capacity. Personnel moved through the halls with purpose and efficiency, and she noticed that every human they encountered wore what appeared to be some form of personal armor, even in what was obviously a secure facility. "Captain, if you don't mind me asking," Thane interjected, his scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic protocol. "Your technology appears to be based on principles we haven't encountered before. Your energy generation systems, your defensive capabilities, they don't match any known technological development pattern." Chen glanced back at him with an expression that might have been a smile. "That's because we developed our technology while fighting for our survival against species that considered us vermin. When you're facing extinction, you get creative with physics." They entered a large briefing room where a massive holographic display dominated the central space. Standing beside it was another human, this one older than Captain Chun, with gray hair and the bearing of someone who had spent decades making life and death decisions. His uniform was more elaborate than Chen's, and Zara's cultural analysis protocols identified him as a high-ranking military officer. "Commander Velthorn," the human stepped forward. "I'm Admiral Miguel Rodriguez, commanding officer of the Earth Defense Force Outer Rim Division. Captain Chun has filled me in on your mission and your questions about our capabilities. I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what's really happening in this galaxy." The Admiral gestured toward the holographic display, which immediately came to life, showing a three-dimensional map of the local spiral arm. Red indicators marked what Zara recognized as systems that had fallen to the Zephyrian advance, while green indicators showed systems still under galactic control. But what caught her attention were the blue indicators, dozens of them, marking systems that weren't on any galactic chart. 53 years ago, Rodriguez began, the Zephyrians made their first probe into what they thought was empty space. They encountered a human research station in the Vega system. The station had a crew of 200 scientists and their families. The Zephyrians killed them all and turned the station into a forward observation post. The display zoomed in on a system marked with both red and blue indicators. That was their first and last easy victory against humanity. When we found out what happened to Vega Station, we made a decision that the Galactic Council would probably consider both insane and morally questionable. Zara felt a chill of anticipation. "What kind of decision?" "We decided that the Zephyrians needed to learn that there are some species in this galaxy that you don't attack without consequences." Chen answered, her voice carrying a cold edge that reminded Zara of the ancient legends about human warfare. "So we taught them." The holographic display shifted to show battle footage that made Zara's tactical analysis system struggle to process what they were seeing. Human ships, constructed from the same brutal metal and ceramic materials as the facility around them, were engaging Zephyrian forces with weapons that shouldn't have been effective against quantum-shielded vessels. Yet somehow, the human weapons were cutting through Zephyrian defenses like they were made of paper. "Our weapons technology is based on what we call kinetic resonance principles," Admiral Rodriguez explained as the footage showed human ships launching projectiles that seemed to phase through enemy shields before detonating with devastating effect. "We discovered that if you accelerate physical matter to a significant percentage of light speed and tune its molecular frequency to match the target's quantum signature, most energy-based defenses become useless." Thane's four arms were moving frantically as he tried to take notes on technology that violated several fundamental principles of galactic physics. "That should be impossible. Quantum shields are specifically designed to deflect all forms of matter and energy. Only if you assume that matter and energy are fundamentally different things," Captain Chen replied. "Human physics takes a more unified approach. When you're fighting for your species' survival, you tend to question assumptions that other civilizations take for granted." The battle footage continued, showing human forces employing tactics that were both sophisticated and terrifyingly aggressive. They used their ships like guided missiles, ramming Zephyrian vessels after their crews had evacuated to smaller craft. They deployed weapons that seemed to turn enemy ammunition against the ships that fired it. Most disturbing of all, they fought with a coordination and determination that suggested they would rather die than retreat. In 53 years of conflict, Rodriguez continued. The Zephyrians have never successfully held a system that we've decided to defend. They've learned to avoid sectors where they detect human energy signatures. Our intelligence suggests they've developed specific protocols for dealing with what they call the persistent species. Zara was beginning to understand why the ancient legends about humans had focused so heavily on their supposed military prowess. How many systems are under human control? The display expanded to show the full galactic arm, and Zara felt her breathing apparatus cycle rapidly as she saw the scope of human territory. Blue indicators marked not dozens, but hundreds of systems, forming a defensive perimeter that explained why the Zephyrian advance had stalled in the outer spiral arms. 317 inhabited systems, with defensive installations in roughly 2,000 more, Rodriguez replied matter-of-factly. We've been expanding steadily for the past 3 millennia, but we've been careful to avoid contact with galactic civilization. Based on our monitoring of galactic communications, we weren't sure the other species were ready to learn that humans had survived the Great Silence. The Great Silence. Lieutenant Kex spoke for the first time since the briefing began. Captain Chin exchanged a glance with the Admiral before answering. 3,000 years ago, humanity made the decision to disappear from galactic civilization. We had philosophical disagreements with the way the Galactic Council was handling threats to civilian populations. Rather than fight a war against potential allies, we chose to withdraw and develop our capabilities independently. The implication hit Zara like a physical blow. The humans hadn't been destroyed or evolved beyond recognition. They had deliberately hidden themselves from the rest of the galaxy while building a military force that could stand against threats that the Galactic Council considered unstoppable. Your people have been preparing for this war for 3,000 years, she said, the pieces finally falling into place. Preparing, fighting, and winning, Rodriguez confirmed. The Zephyrian invasion isn't news to us, Commander. We've been dealing with their expansion attempts for over half a century. The question is whether the Galactic Council is ready to work with allies who fight wars differently than they're used to. Admiral Rodriguez gestured to the display, which now showed real-time tactical information about ongoing military operations. Human fleets were engaging Zephyrian forces in 12 different systems simultaneously, and, according to the data streams, they were winning in all 12 encounters. We've been monitoring galactic communications, and we know the Council is looking for allies, Rodriguez continued. We also know that they're running out of options. The Zephyrians have proven they can overwhelm any conventional defense, and most galactic species aren't culturally equipped for the kind of sustained warfare necessary to defeat them. But humans are, Chen added, and there was something in her voice that reminded Zara of ancient predators discussing hunting strategies. We've had 3 millennia to study galactic military doctrine, and we've identified its fundamental weakness. Every galactic species approaches warfare as a diplomatic tool, a way to achieve political objectives with minimal casualties and destruction. That's not how humans fight wars, Rodriguez said, his expression growing grim. When we fight to win completely and permanently. We don't negotiate with enemies who threaten civilian populations. We don't accept limited victories that leave threats intact. When we go to war with the intention of ensuring that our enemies never threaten anyone ever again. The briefing room fell silent as the implications of this philosophy sank in. Zara realized she was looking at representatives of a species that had spent 3,000 years developing military technology and doctrine specifically designed to fight the kind of total war that galactic civilization had been trying to avoid. "What are you proposing?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Admiral Rodriguez smiled, and the expression was both reassuring and terrifying. "We're proposing to end the Zephyrian threat permanently, not negotiate with them, not establish territorial boundaries, not achieve a sustainable peace through diplomatic compromise. We're offering to remove them from the galaxy entirely. And in exchange?" Captain Chin stepped forward, her expression serious. "In exchange, the Galactic Council acknowledges that humans exist, that we have legitimate territorial claims in the systems we've defended, and that we have the right to continue governing ourselves according to our own principles. We're not asking to join the Galactic Council," Rodriguez added. We're asking for recognition as an independent allied power. We'll help you win this war, but we'll do it our way. Zara looked around the briefing room, taking in the tactical displays showing ongoing human victories against forces that had crushed galactic fleets, and realized that she was witnessing a moment that would reshape the entire balance of power in the galaxy. The humans weren't just offering military assistance. They were offering to solve the greatest threat galactic civilization had ever faced. The question was whether the galaxy was ready to accept help from a species that had spent 3,000 years learning how to fight wars that no one else could win. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had witnessed many historic moments over its 5,000-year history, but nothing quite like the emergency session that was about to unfold. Representatives from 47 different species filled the massive chamber, their varied forms and breathing apparatus creating a symphony of alien sounds as they discussed what Commander Zara Velthorn had reported from her encounter with the humans. Chancellor Vexhai of the Altarian Republic called the session to order, her melodic voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustic enhancement systems. As the elected leader of the Council's current session, she bore the responsibility of guiding galactic civilization through its greatest crisis, and the weight of that responsibility was evident in her normally graceful movements. Fellow representatives, she began, her crystalline form catching the chamber's bioluminescent lighting. We are here to consider information that challenges everything we believed about the nature of our galaxy and the threats we face. Commander Velthorn, please present your findings to the Assembly. Zara stood at the central podium, her survey uniform seeming almost primitive compared to the elaborate ceremonial garments worn by the Council representatives. The holographic display systems activated around her, showing the tactical data she had gathered from her meeting with the human military leadership. Honored representatives, she began. 3 days ago, my survey vessel encountered a civilization that our star charts indicated should not exist. The beings we met identify themselves as humans, a species that our historical records suggest disappeared from galactic civilization over 3,000 years ago. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of sounds as representatives expressed disbelief in dozens of different languages. Chancellor Vexhai's harmonics rose to restore order, her diplomatic training allowing her to project calm authority even as she struggled with the implications of what she was hearing. The humans claimed to have been monitoring galactic communications for millennia. Zara continued once the chamber quieted. They possess detailed intelligence about the Zephyrian invasion, including information that has been classified at the highest levels of Council security. More importantly, they claim to have been successfully fighting Zephyrian forces for over 50 years. Representative Coltan of the Draconian Systems rose from his position, his massive form casting shadows across the assembly floor. Commander, are you seriously suggesting that a mythical species has been conducting military operations against the greatest threat our galaxy has ever faced? And we knew nothing about it. The holographic display shifted to show the battle footage that Admiral Rodriguez had shared, and the chamber fell into stunned silence as they watched human forces systematically destroying Zephyrian fleets using tactics and weapons that defied conventional understanding of galactic military doctrine. The humans have developed military technology based on principles that our science considers impossible, Zara explained as the footage showed human ships phasing through quantum shields and human weapons that seemed to turn enemy ammunition against the ships that fired it. Their understanding of physics appears to have evolved along different lines than our own, possibly due to their isolation from galactic scientific community. High Counselor Thessare of the Zentorian hegemony activated her communication system, her telepathic voice reaching every mind in the chamber. These tactical displays suggest a level of military sophistication that exceeds anything in our databases. If accurate, these humans have solved defensive and offensive problems that our best military scientists considered unsolvable. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives consulted their advisors and accessed their own intelligence databases. The implications were staggering. Not only did humanity exist, but they had apparently developed into the most formidable military force in the galaxy, while remaining completely hidden from galactic civilization. "What do they want from us?" asked Representative Felkor of the Andromedan Trade Alliance, his mechanical voice cutting through the ambient noise. No civilization develops this level of military capability without strategic objectives. Zara activated another section of the holographic display, showing the territorial map that Admiral Rodriguez had shared. The scope of human-controlled space drew gasps of amazement from even the most experienced galactic politicians. They control over 300 inhabited systems and have defensive installations in approximately 2,000 more, she reported. They claim to have been expanding steadily for 3 millennia while avoiding contact with galactic civilization. Their territorial holdings form a defensive perimeter that explains why the Zephyrian advance stalled in the outer spiral arms. Chancellor Vexhi's harmonics took on a note of barely contained anxiety. What are their terms for cooperation? They offer to eliminate the Zephyrian threat entirely, Zara replied. And the chamber erupted again as the word eliminate was translated into dozens of languages. Not defeat, not negotiate with, not establish defensive boundaries against. They proposed to remove the Zephyrians from the galaxy permanently. And, in exchange, pressed High Counselor Thessare, her telepathic communication carrying undertones of concern that reached every psionically sensitive being in the chamber. Recognition of their territorial claims, acknowledgement of their right to self-governance, and formal recognition as an independent allied power. They specifically stated they have no interest in joining the Galactic Council or submitting to galactic law. Representative Coltan's massive form shifted restlessly. They want us to legitimize a separatist military power that has been operating in secret for 3,000 years. The precedent this would set could destabilize the entire galactic political structure. The alternative, Zara said quietly, is watching the Zephyrians continue their advance until they reach the core worlds. According to human intelligence, the Zephyrian war machine is currently focused on breaking through human defensive lines. If those lines fall, nothing stands between the Zephyrians and galactic civilization. The chamber fell silent as representatives grappled with an impossible choice. Accept help from a species that operated outside galactic law and had spent millennia developing military capabilities that made them potentially more dangerous than the threat they offered to eliminate, or face the Zephyrian advance with conventional forces that had already proven inadequate. Trade Minister Yelhar of the Commercial Federation stood to address the assembly. Has anyone considered that these humans might be working with the Zephyrians? This entire situation seems conveniently timed. They appear just when we're most desperate, offering solutions that seem too good to be true. Before Zara could respond, her communication system activated with an incoming priority signal from the Galactic Defense Network. The message was brief, but devastating. 3 more systems had fallen to Zephyrian forces in the past 6 hours, including the heavily defended Kepler 438 system that was supposed to hold the line for at least another standard year. Honored representatives, Zara said as she shared the defensive network update. We may not have the luxury of debating human motivations. The Zephyrian advance is accelerating, and our conventional defensive strategies are failing ahead of all projections. Chancellor Vexhi consulted her advisors before addressing the assembly. Commander Velthorn, did the humans provide any demonstration of their claimed capabilities beyond the tactical recordings they shared? They invited a full diplomatic mission to observe their military operations firsthand, Zara replied. Admiral Rodriguez specifically mentioned that they are currently engaged in defensive actions in 12 different systems. He offered to allow galactic observers to witness their tactical methods in real combat situations. High Counselor Thessare's telepathic voice carried a note of grim determination. I propose we accept their invitation. Before we can make any decision about formal recognition or military cooperation, we need to verify their claims about their capabilities. Representative Felcor's mechanical voice added a note of caution. And if their capabilities are real? If they can actually do what they claim? Are we prepared to legitimize a military power that operates outside our legal and ethical frameworks? Are we prepared to watch galactic civilization fall to preserve our legal and ethical frameworks? Countered Representative Coltan, his massive form leaning forward aggressively. These humans may operate differently than we do, but they're offering to solve a problem that we cannot solve ourselves. The debate continued for hours as representatives struggled with the implications of humanity's return to galactic affairs. Some argued that accepting human assistance would set a dangerous precedent for other separatist movements. Others pointed out that without human intervention, there might not be a galactic civilization left to govern. Chancellor Vexhai finally called for order as the emergency session stretched into its 8th hour. "We are facing an existential threat that requires immediate action. I propose we authorize a full diplomatic and military observation mission to verify human claims about their capabilities. Based on what we learn, we can make an informed decision about formal cooperation." The vote was closer than anyone had expected. 24 representatives voted in favor of the observation mission, 20 voted against, and 3 abstained. The narrow margin reflected the deep uncertainty about dealing with a species that had deliberately remained hidden from galactic civilization for 3 millennia. As the session concluded and representatives began filing out of the chamber, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they had just made a decision that would fundamentally alter the nature of galactic civilization. The humans had returned to the galaxy at its moment of greatest crisis, offering solutions that came with prices that no one fully understood. The question that would determine the fate of galactic civilization was whether those prices were worth paying to ensure that there would still be a galaxy left to govern when the war was over, and whether the Council was prepared to discover that some problems could only be solved by species that were willing to fight wars the way humans fought them, with the absolute determination to ensure that their enemies never threatened anyone ever again. Within hours of the vote, the largest diplomatic mission in galactic history was being assembled to witness something that had been considered impossible just days before: humans fighting a war that the rest of the galaxy had believed was unwinnable. The observation fleet consisted of representatives from every major galactic civilization, their ships maintaining careful formation as they approached the coordinates Admiral Rodriguez had provided. Commander Zara Velthorn found herself in the unusual position of serving as liaison between the diplomatic mission and the human military forces they were about to observe in action. The Proxima Centauri system had been under Zephyrian siege for 3 standard weeks, according to human intelligence reports. It was a critical junction point that controlled hyperspace routes to 17 different sectors, making it strategically vital for both human defensive operations and Zephyrian expansion plans. According to Admiral Rodriguez, the battle for Proxima Centauri would demonstrate exactly how humans conducted military operations when the stakes were existential. Observation Fleet. This is Admiral Sarah Chun aboard the UHDF Indomitable. Came the communication as the galactic vessels entered the outer edge of the system. Welcome to what we call a Tuesday afternoon in human space. I hope you're prepared for a crash course in applied kinetic warfare. The holographic displays aboard the observation ships immediately came alive with tactical data that strained their analysis systems. The Proxima Centauri system was a battlefield on a scale that none of the galactic representatives had ever witnessed. Zephyrian forces controlled the inner system, their biomechanical fleets forming defensive perimeters around the star itself, while human forces occupied strategic positions throughout the asteroid belt and outer planet orbits. High Counselor Thesaray's telepathic voice reached every mind in the observation fleet. The tactical scope is unprecedented. I count over 2,000 vessels engaged in active combat operations. How long has this battle been continuing? 3 weeks, 2 days, 14 hours, and 37 minutes. Admiral Chun replied with the precision of someone who had been personally counting every moment of the engagement. The Zephyrians established their siege positions 26 days ago. We've been systematically reducing their capabilities while preventing them from consolidating their hold on the inner system. Representative Coltan activated his communication system from the Draconian flagship. Admiral Chun, our tactical analysis suggests the Zephyrian forces significantly outnumber your fleets. How have you maintained defensive positions for over 3 weeks? The answer came in the form of a demonstration that redefined everything the galactic observers thought they knew about space warfare. A squadron of human ships, each no larger than a galactic patrol vessel, engaged a Zephyrian battle group that should have overwhelmed them through sheer firepower advantage. Instead of the conventional energy weapon exchanges the observers expected, the human ships launched what appeared to be simple metal projectiles. The projectiles moved at velocities that strained the observation ship's tracking systems. But what happened when they reached their targets defied every principle of galactic military science. The Zephyrian quantum shields, designed to deflect any known form of matter or energy, simply failed to register the incoming projectiles. The metal slugs passed through the defensive barriers as if they didn't exist, striking the biomechanical hulls with devastating effect. Impossible, breathed Chief Science Officer Thane from his position aboard Zara's vessel. Those projectiles shouldn't be able to penetrate quantum shielding. The energy requirements to accelerate matter to those velocities should be beyond any reasonable power generation system. Admiral Chen's voice carried a note of professional pride. Our weapons operate on what we call quantum-locked kinetic principles. We accelerate ferrous projectiles to approximately 40% of light speed while maintaining quantum coherence with the target's molecular structure. From the target's perspective, our ammunition doesn't exist until the moment of impact. Trade Minister Yelhar's mechanical voice cut across the communication channels. The energy costs must be astronomical. How do you sustain this level of firepower across multiple engagements? Each of our ships carries a controlled antimatter reactor capable of generating power equivalent to a small star. Chun replied matter-of-factly. When you're fighting for species survival, energy efficiency becomes secondary to tactical effectiveness. The tactical display updated to show the broader scope of human military operations throughout the system. What the galactic observers had assumed was a single large battle was actually dozens of smaller engagements coordinated with a precision that suggested information sharing capabilities beyond anything in galactic military doctrine. Admiral. Chancellor Vexhi's harmonics carried a note of concerned curiosity. How are your forces maintaining such precise coordination across multiple light minutes of space? Quantum entanglement communication has range limitations that should prevent this level of tactical integration. We don't use quantum entanglement for military communications, Admiral Chen replied. We use something we call neural-linked command protocols. Our ship's AI systems are connected through quantum-coherent consciousness networks that operate instantaneously regardless of distance. The implications of this revelation sent shockwaves through the observation fleet. The humans had apparently developed artificial intelligence systems that could share consciousness across interstellar distances, creating military coordination capabilities that were theoretically impossible according to galactic science. Before the observers could fully process this information, the tactical situation in Proxima Centauri suddenly changed. Zephyrian reinforcements began emerging from hyperspace, their biomechanical forms dwarfing even the largest human vessels. The newcomers moved with the predatory efficiency that had made Zephyrian forces unstoppable against conventional galactic defenses. Now you'll see why the Zephyrians have learned to avoid prolonged engagements with human forces, Admiral Chen announced as the human fleet formations began shifting into configurations that the galactic tactical databases didn't recognize. What followed was a demonstration of military doctrine that challenged every assumption about space warfare. Instead of retreating in the face of overwhelming enemy reinforcements, the human forces attacked. But this wasn't the disciplined, measured assault that characterized galactic military traditions. This was something that could only be described as controlled aggression elevated to the level of high art. Human ships moved in coordinated swarms, their weapons targeting not just enemy vessels, but the structural integrity of space itself around those vessels. The observers watched in fascination and horror as human forces deployed weapons that created localized gravitational anomalies, turning the Zephyrian fleet's own momentum against them. They're weaponizing physics, Representative Falcor observed, his mechanical voice carrying notes of both admiration and concern. Those gravitational distortion weapons should require energy output equivalent to artificial stars. They do, Admiral Chen confirmed. Each of our dreadnoughts carries enough antimatter to power a galactic civilization for a century. We learned long ago that in warfare, there's no such thing as overkill, only open fire and reload. The battle's climax came when the Zephyrian forces attempted to implement their standard siege-breaking tactic, using their biomechanical ships to ram human defensive positions at high velocity. This strategy had proven devastating against galactic forces, whose ships were not designed to withstand physical impact from vessels the size of small moons. The human response redefined the concept of defensive warfare. Instead of trying to avoid the ramming attacks, human forces met them head-on. Ship after ship engaged in direct collision courses with Zephyrian vessels 10 times their size, their crews evacuating at the last moment while their AI systems guided the ships into precise impact points. Each collision resulted in explosions that registered on the observation fleet's sensors as miniature supernovas. The human ships were equipped with antimatter warheads that detonated on impact, turning their vessels into guided weapons of unprecedented destructive power. This is madness. High Counselor Thesaray's telepathic communication carried undertones of shock. They're sacrificing their ships as weapons. The resource cost alone should be prohibitive. Ships can be replaced, Admiral Chun replied, her voice carrying a coldness that reminded the observers of ancient legends about human military philosophy. Crew members can evacuate to support vessels and fight again. Territory, once lost to an enemy like the Zephyrians, can never be recovered. Within 6 hours of the observers' arrival, the Zephyrian siege of Proxima Centauri was broken. The alien forces retreated to hyperspace, leaving behind a debris field that would take decades to clear and a human fleet that had lost nearly 30% of its vessels while achieving what galactic military doctrine considered impossible. Admiral Chun, Chancellor Vexhi's harmonics carried a mixture of awe and trepidation. Your forces have achieved a victory that our tactical computers classify as statistically impossible. How many engagements like this have you fought? The answer came with a casualness that sent chills through every observer present. This was a relatively minor skirmish by our standards. We've been fighting battles like this every few days for over 50 years. The Zephyrians keep probing our defenses, and we keep demonstrating that their expansion ends where human space begins. As the observation fleet prepared to return to galactic space with their reports, the representatives struggled to comprehend what they had witnessed. The humans hadn't just demonstrated superior military technology. They had shown a completely different approach to warfare that treated the destruction of their own equipment as an acceptable tactical option and viewed enemy retreat as the minimum acceptable outcome. Representative Coltan's final communication to the human fleet carried the weight of galactic civilization's growing realization about what they were dealing with. Admiral Chun, your people have capabilities that exceed anything in our military databases. If you can achieve victories like this routinely, why haven't you already eliminated the Zephyrian threat entirely? Admiral Chin's response would echo through galactic political circles for decades to come. Because until today, the Galactic Council had never asked us to. We've been content to keep the Zephyrians contained in sectors where they can't threaten civilian populations. But if you want them gone permanently, just say the word. We've been developing military strategies for that contingency for the past 3,000 years. The observation fleet returned to galactic space, carrying footage and tactical data that would force every military analyst in the galaxy to reconsider their understanding of what was possible in warfare. The humans weren't just offering to help with the Zephyrian crisis. They were revealing that they had the capability to end threats that galactic civilization had considered unstoppable. The only question remaining was whether galactic civilization was prepared to accept help from a species that fought wars with the absolute determination to ensure their enemies never threatened anyone ever again. 6 months after the observation mission to Proxima Centauri, the Galactic Council faced a decision that would define the future of their civilization. The Zephyrian advance had accelerated dramatically, with 17 more systems falling in the weeks following the human demonstration. It was becoming clear that conventional galactic military doctrine could not stop an enemy that treated warfare as biological imperative rather than political negotiation. Chancellor Vexhi stood before the assembled representatives in the Grand Assembly Hall, her crystalline form reflecting the chamber's emergency lighting. The debate over human alliance had consumed galactic politics for months, but recent developments had forced the issue to its inevitable conclusion. Honored representatives, she began, her harmonics carrying the weight of impending history. 3 hours ago, the Zephyrian War fleet broke through our defensive lines at Wolf 359. They are now 12 light-years from Earth's solar system, and 18 light-years from our own core worlds. Admiral Rodriguez has contacted us with what he describes as humanity's final offer. The holographic display activated to show Admiral Rodriguez's image, transmitted from the bridge of what appeared to be the largest military vessel ever constructed. Behind him, tactical displays showed the scope of human military preparation, and the assembled representatives could see that humanity had been mobilizing for total war. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Rodriguez began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades preparing for this moment. The Zephyrian War fleet currently advancing on our positions represents the largest military force they have assembled in over a century. Our intelligence indicates they intend to eliminate both human and galactic civilization in a single coordinated campaign. The tactical display shifted to show the Zephyrian fleet composition, and gasps of horror echoed through the chamber. Over 50,000 biomechanical vessels, including command ships the size of small moons, were moving in perfect formation toward the inner galaxy. It was a force capable of devastating entire star systems, and conventional galactic military analysis suggested it was unstoppable. Admiral, High Counselor Thessare's telepathic voice carried undertones of barely controlled panic. Our combined fleets number less than 8,000 vessels. Even with human reinforcements, the numerical disadvantage appears insurmountable. Rodriguez's expression remained calm, but there was something in his eyes that reminded the observers of predatory animals calculating the best approach to bringing down dangerous prey. High Counselor, you're thinking about this as a conventional military engagement. Humanity stopped thinking about warfare in conventional terms about 3,000 years ago. The display changed to show human fleet positions throughout the galaxy, and the representatives realized they were looking at something unprecedented in galactic military history. Instead of massing their forces for a traditional defensive engagement, human fleets were positioned in seemingly random locations throughout Zephyrian-controlled space. 37 hours ago, Admiral Rodriguez continued, the Galactic Council formally requested humanity's assistance in eliminating the Zephyrian threat permanently. Today, we begin what we call Operation Final Resolve. We are not going to defeat the Zephyrian War fleet. We are going to eliminate the Zephyrian species from the galaxy entirely. The chamber erupted in chaos as representatives struggled to comprehend the scope of what the Admiral was proposing. Chancellor Vexhi's harmonics rose to restore order, but her own voice carried notes of shock at the casual way Rodriguez had announced what amounted to genocide on a galactic scale. Admiral, Representative Coltan's massive form leaned forward aggressively. Are you seriously proposing the complete extinction of an intelligent species? Representative Coltan, Rodriguez replied with the patience of someone explaining elementary concepts to a child. The Zephyrians are not an intelligent species in any sense that galactic civilization would recognize. They are a biomechanical weapon system created by an extinct civilization to continue warfare long after the war itself had ended. They don't negotiate, they don't surrender, and they don't stop expanding until they encounter resistance they cannot overcome. The tactical display shifted to show intelligence data that the humans had gathered over decades of conflict with Zephyrian forces. What the galactic representatives saw challenged their fundamental assumptions about the nature of their enemy. The beings you call Zephyrians are not individual consciousness, Admiral Rodriguez explained as the display showed the internal structure of Zephyrian biomechanical forms. They are components of a distributed artificial intelligence system designed for one purpose: converting all matter in the galaxy into additional military units. Every world they conquer, every population they consume, every resource they acquire makes them stronger. Trade Minister Yelhar's mechanical voice carried a note of skepticism. Admiral, even if your analysis is correct, the complete elimination of an entire species sets a precedent that could destabilize galactic civilization for millennia. Trade Minister, Rodriguez responded, his voice taking on the cold edge that characterized human military communications. There will be no galactic civilization if the Zephyrian expansion continues. Based on their current rate of territorial acquisition, they will control the entire galaxy within 2 standard centuries. The question is not whether eliminating them sets a dangerous precedent. The question is whether you want there to be a galaxy left to set precedents in. The chamber fell silent as representatives grappled with the horrible logic of the Admiral's position. The tactical data was undeniable. Conventional resistance to Zephyrian expansion was failing, and no amount of negotiation or diplomatic compromise would change their biological imperative to consume and convert everything they encountered. "What are you proposing specifically?" Chancellor Vexhai asked, her harmonics carrying resignation to the inevitable. Admiral Rodriguez gestured to the tactical display, which now showed the full scope of human military preparation. Phase 1 began 6 hours ago. Human stealth fleets are currently positioned in 17 Zephyrian stronghold systems. In 14 minutes, we will simultaneously destroy their industrial infrastructure, command networks, and resource bases. The display showed real-time feeds from human attack fleets as they engaged targets throughout Zephyrian space. But what the galactic observers saw wasn't conventional warfare. It was systematic annihilation carried out with technological precision that made previous human demonstrations seem restrained by comparison. Human ships were deploying weapons that created chain reactions in the quantum structure of matter itself. Entire planets were disappearing as human forces triggered controlled collapse of atomic bonds, turning Zephyrian industrial worlds into expanding clouds of subatomic particles. The scale of destruction was beyond anything in galactic military history. Phase 2 involves eliminating their mobile forces. Rodriguez continued as the tactical display showed human fleets engaging Zephyrian war fleets with weapons that seemed to erase their targets from existence. Our quantum dissolution warheads can neutralize biomechanical vessels by disrupting the atomic forces that hold their matter together. Each weapon can eliminate approximately 5,000 Zephyrian ships. Representative Felcor's mechanical voice carried undertones of horror. "Admiral, the energy requirements for weapons of that magnitude should exceed the output of entire star systems." "They do," Rodriguez replied matter-of-factly. "Each quantum dissolution warhead is powered by a controlled singularity that we create specifically for this purpose. When you're fighting to prevent galactic extinction, energy efficiency becomes irrelevant." The tactical feeds showed human forces systematically destroying Zephyrian installations throughout the outer spiral arms. World after world simply vanished as human weapons eliminated the atomic forces that held matter together. The scope of destruction was so vast that the observation systems struggled to process the data streams. Phase 3 involves what we call deep space sterilization. Admiral Rodriguez explained as the display showed human fleets pursuing fleeing Zephyrian forces into the void between star systems. Every Zephyrian vessel, every component, every trace of their biomechanical technology must be eliminated to prevent regeneration. We cannot allow any fragment of their artificial intelligence system to survive and begin the expansion cycle again. High Counselor Thesaray's telepathic communication carried overwhelming disbelief. "Admiral, you're describing the complete elimination of every trace of Zephyrian presence in the galaxy. The scope of this operation exceeds anything in recorded galactic history." "High Counselor," Admiral Rodriguez replied, his expression growing grim. "This is what total warfare looks like when conducted by a species that refuses to accept any outcome except complete victory. Humanity learned long ago that some threats cannot be negotiated with, cannot be contained, and cannot be allowed to continue existing." The tactical display updated in real time as human forces completed their systematic destruction of Zephyrian civilization. System after system showed nothing but empty space where Zephyrian installations had existed hours before. The artificial intelligence network that had threatened galactic civilization for over a century was being methodically erased from existence. "The operation will be complete in approximately 18 hours, Rodriguez announced as the final Zephyrian strongholds disappeared from the tactical display. "At that point, the Zephyrian threat will no longer exist. The galaxy will be safe for civilian populations to develop and expand without fear of biomechanical conversion." As the representatives watched the final phases of humanity's genocidal campaign against the Zephyrians, they realized they were witnessing something that would fundamentally alter the balance of power in the galaxy. Humanity had not just defeated an unstoppable enemy. They had erased them from existence with a thoroughness that defied comprehension. Chancellor Vexhai's harmonics carried a mixture of gratitude and terror as she addressed Admiral Rodriguez for the final time. Admiral, humanity has done something that galactic civilization could not do for itself. The debt we owe cannot be calculated. But, I must ask, what assurance do we have that this same capability will not someday be turned against us? Admiral Rodriguez's response would be remembered as the moment that defined humanity's relationship with galactic civilization for the next millennium. Chancellor, humanity has spent 3,000 years developing the capability to eliminate threats to civilian populations. We have never used these capabilities against species that do not threaten the innocent. Today, we eliminated the Zephyrians because they were a cancer in the galaxy that would have consumed everything given enough time. He paused, his expression becoming serious. But I want to be absolutely clear about something. Humanity will continue to exist as an independent power in this galaxy. We will continue to develop military capabilities that other species consider impossible. And we will continue to use those capabilities to eliminate threats that other civilizations cannot handle themselves. The galaxy is now safe because humanity exists in it. I suggest that all civilized species remember that the same determination and capability that eliminated the Zephyrians will be applied to any future threat that endangers civilian populations. We are not asking for gratitude, and we are not asking for integration into galactic political structures. We are simply stating a fact. As long as humanity exists, the galaxy will be protected from threats that seek to eliminate civilization itself. As the final Zephyrian installations vanished from the tactical display, the assembled representatives realized they were looking at the beginning of a new age in galactic history. Humanity had returned not as supplicants seeking acceptance, but as the dominant military power in the galaxy, committed to protecting civilization through methods that other species lacked the will or capability to employ. The age of human legend had indeed begun again, and the galaxy would never be the same.